I've always been drawn to mysteries, especially the kind that lurk in the shadows of forgotten places. So when I heard about the haunted highway, where travelers vanished without a trace, I knew I had to see it for myself. Armed with a notebook and a camera, I set out one foggy evening, determined to uncover the truth. The road was everything the rumors claimed it to be, twisting and turning through dense forests, shrouded in an eerie mist that seemed to swallow the headlights of passing cars. As I drove deeper into the darkness, I felt a chill run down my spine, as if unseen eyes were watching me from the shadows. That's when I saw him, a lone figure standing on the side of the road, thumb outstretched in a desperate plea for a ride. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and rolled down the window. "Need a lift?" I asked, trying to sound casual despite the unease creeping into my voice. The man nodded gratefully and climbed into the passenger seat. He introduced himself as Tom, a truck driver who had been on the road for longer than he cared to remember. As we drove, Tom shared stories of the highway, of strange lights that danced among the trees and ghostly apparitions that appeared in the rearview mirror. I listened intently, scribbling notes in my journal as the miles passed by. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that Tom was hiding something. His eyes darted nervously whenever I asked too many questions, and he seemed reluctant to talk about the more sinister aspects of the road. As we approached a particularly desolate stretch of highway, Tom suddenly grew quiet, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. I glanced out the window, heart skipping a beat as I saw a faint glow in the distance, a glow that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "What's that?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Tom didn't answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. But as we drew closer, the glow intensified, casting eerie shadows across the dashboard. I reached for my camera, fingers trembling as I tried to capture the mysterious light on film. And then, without warning, the truck shuddered to a stop. I stared in horror as the engine sputtered and died, leaving us stranded in the middle of nowhere with the strange glow drawing closer with each passing second. "We need to get out of here," Tom said urgently, grabbing my arm and pulling me out of the truck. We ran through the fog-shrouded forest, branches clawing at our clothes as we stumbled over roots and fallen logs. I didn't dare look back, too afraid of what might be following us. But as we reached the edge of the woods, I glanced over my shoulder and froze. The glow had surrounded the truck, swirling and pulsating with an unearthly brilliance. Shadows danced within its depths, twisting and contorting into shapes that defied comprehension. And at the center of it all stood a figure clad in tattered clothes, its eyes burning with a malevolent hunger. "We have to go," Tom whispered, voice trembling with fear. We raced down the road, feet pounding against the pavement as we fled from the horrors behind us. But no matter how fast we ran, the darkness seemed to close in around us, threatening to swallow us whole. Just when I thought we couldn't go any further, we stumbled upon a small cabin nestled deep in the woods. Tom banged on the door, shouting for help as I scanned the darkness for any sign of pursuit. But to my relief, the glow had vanished, leaving only the echoes of our terror in its wake. The door creaked open, revealing an elderly man with kind eyes and a grizzled beard. He listened to our story in silence, nodding solemnly as we recounted our harrowing ordeal on the haunted highway. "You're lucky to be alive," he said finally, ushering us inside and offering us warm blankets and hot tea. As we sat by the crackling fire, the events of the night replayed in my mind like a fevered dream. I knew then that I had stumbled upon something far beyond my understanding, a place where the veil between worlds was thin, and ancient spirits roamed unchecked. And as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder if we had escaped the darkness or merely postponed the inevitable. One thing was certain, the haunted highway held secrets that would haunt me for the rest of my days. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, running for my life on a deserted highway, with danger lurking around every corner. It all started when I made the mistake of trusting the wrong person. Her name was Emily. She appeared out of nowhere, a desperate look in her eyes as she flagged down my truck on a lonely stretch of road. Without thinking twice, I pulled over and unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in, panting with relief, and I noticed the fear etched into her features. "They're after me," she muttered, voice barely audible over the roar of the engine. I didn't ask who they were. Instead, I hit the gas pedal and we sped down the highway, tires screeching on the asphalt as I tried to put as much distance between us and whatever pursuers were chasing her. As we drove, Emily explained her situation, how she had stumbled upon something she wasn't supposed to see, and now powerful people wanted her silenced. I listened in disbelief, glancing at her in the rearview mirror as she nervously scanned the horizon for signs of danger. "They're getting closer," she whispered, eyes widening in fear. Sure enough, headlights appeared in the distance, growing larger with each passing second. I cursed under my breath, pushing the truck to its limits as I weaved through traffic and took every shortcut I knew to shake off our pursuers. But they were relentless. No matter how fast I drove or how many turns I took, they were always right behind us, closing in with every mile. Emily gripped the dashboard, teeth clenched in a mixture of determination and fear. "We need to lose them," she said urgently, voice tinged with desperation. I nodded grimly, my hands sweating on the steering wheel as I searched for an escape route. That's when I spotted a narrow dirt road branching off from the main highway, a risky move, but our only chance at losing them. I veered off the highway without hesitation, the truck bouncing over potholes and rocks as we raced deeper into the wilderness. The headlights behind us faltered for a moment, giving us a brief respite as we plunged deeper into the darkness. But just as I dared to hope we had evaded them, a gunshot shattered the silence, echoing through the night like a death knell. I glanced over at Emily, eyes wide with shock as blood blossomed on her shoulder, a grim reminder that our pursuers were not about to give up so easily. "We have to keep going," she gasped, gritting her teeth against the pain. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest as I pushed the truck to its limits once more. The dirt road twisted and turned through the rugged terrain, branches scraping against the sides of the truck as we barreled toward an uncertain future. Hours passed like minutes as we raced through the night, adrenaline fueling our escape as we left civilization far behind. Emily grew pale and weak beside me, her breath shallow and ragged as she fought to stay conscious. "We can't keep going like this," I said finally, voice hoarse with exhaustion. She nodded weakly, eyes flickering with determination as she glanced out the window at the endless expanse of wilderness around us. We needed a plan, a place to hide where they wouldn't find us. And that's when we saw it, a dilapidated cabin nestled deep in the heart of the forest, its windows dark and empty. Without hesitation, I pulled the truck to a stop and helped Emily out, supporting her weight as we stumbled toward the cabin on shaky legs. We collapsed inside, the door slamming shut behind us as I barricaded it with whatever furniture I could find. Emily slumped against the wall, eyes closed as she fought to catch her breath. I watched helplessly, my mind racing with thoughts of what we had just escaped and what lay ahead. "We'll be safe here," I said finally, trying to sound confident despite the fear gnawing at my insides. Emily nodded weakly, a small smile playing on her lips as she reached out and squeezed my hand. And as we huddled together in the darkness, surrounded by the echoes of our narrow escape, I couldn't help but wonder how long our fragile sanctuary would last. One thing was certain, our journey was far from over. And whether we liked it or not, we were in this together, bound by a dangerous truth that threatened to consume us both. As the night stretched on, I kept watch, eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. And as dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I knew that our fight for survival was far from over. But for now, we were alive. And that was enough. I've always been a bit of a wanderer. So when my car broke down on that lonely stretch of highway, I wasn't exactly surprised. It was late, and the sun had long disappeared behind the horizon, leaving me stranded in darkness. I checked my phone, no signal. Great. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to start walking or wait for help. That's when I saw headlights approaching from the distance. Relief washed over me as a vintage car pulled up beside me. The driver rolled down the window, revealing a middle-aged man with a welcoming smile. "Need a lift?" he asked, his voice calm and reassuring. I must admit, he looked harmless enough. And desperate times call for desperate measures, right? So, I nodded and hopped into the passenger seat, grateful for the warmth of the car. "Where are you headed?" he asked politely, eyes focused on the road ahead. I told him I needed to get to the next town, where I could hopefully find a mechanic or at least a gas station with a working phone. He nodded, assuring me he could take me there. As we drove, the silence settled in, broken only by the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the radio. I glanced around the car, noticing a peculiar symbol etched into the dashboard. It looked ancient, almost like something out of a history book. "What's that symbol?" I blurted out, unable to contain my curiosity. The man glanced at me briefly, his smile faltering for a split second before returning. "Oh, that? Just something I picked up on my travels," he replied vaguely, eyes back on the road. I didn't press further, sensing his reluctance to talk about it. Instead, I tried to focus on the passing scenery outside, though it was hard to see much in the darkness. Time seemed to stretch on as we drove deeper into the night. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Maybe it was the way the man avoided my questions or the eerie silence that hung between us. But I pushed those thoughts aside, telling myself I was just tired and on edge from being stranded. Suddenly, the car jerked to a stop. I looked around in confusion, realizing we were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense woods on either side of the road. "What's going on?" I asked nervously, heart pounding in my chest. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a flashlight. "There's something I need to show you," he said cryptically, stepping out of the car. I hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. Against my better judgment, I followed him into the darkness. He led me through the woods, flashlight cutting through the night like a beacon. We walked in silence for what felt like an eternity, until we reached a small clearing. And that's when I saw it, a circle of stones, ancient and weathered, with strange symbols carved into their surfaces. My breath caught in my throat as I realized the significance of what I was seeing. "What is this place?" I whispered, voice barely audible. The man turned to face me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "This," he began slowly, "is a place of power. A place where the veil between worlds is thin." I took a step back, suddenly feeling very small and vulnerable in the presence of something I couldn't understand. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice trembling. He didn't answer immediately, instead gesturing toward the stones. "Legends say this place holds secrets," he continued, voice low and intense. "Secrets that can grant unimaginable power to those who seek them." I felt a chill run down my spine as his words sank in. Was he serious? Or was this some kind of elaborate joke? Before I could ask any more questions, a loud noise echoed through the woods, a distant rumble that grew louder with each passing second. "We need to go," the man said urgently, grabbing my arm and pulling me back toward the car. We raced through the woods, branches snapping underfoot as we ran. I didn't dare look back, too afraid of what might be chasing us. Finally, we reached the car and he slammed the door shut, starting the engine with shaky hands. As we sped away from that cursed place, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something terrible. The man drove in silence, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. It wasn't until we reached the safety of the next town that he finally spoke. "I'm sorry I dragged you into this," he said quietly, eyes focused on the road ahead. "But you needed to see it for yourself." I didn't know what to say. My mind was still reeling from everything that had happened. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask, voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at me briefly, a sad smile playing on his lips. "Someone who knows too much," he replied cryptically. "And someone who can never truly escape." With that, he dropped me off at the nearest gas station without another word. I watched as his car disappeared into the night, leaving me with more questions than answers. And as I waited for help to arrive, I couldn't help but wonder if I had stumbled into something far beyond my understanding. Something that would haunt me for the rest of my days. But one thing was certain, I would never hitchhike again.